The cold wind howls across the frozen fjord. Smoke rises from the ruins of a forgotten village. Among the ashes, one man walks alone, Arn Sigvaldsson. His blade still drips with the memory of war. But his eyes, they seek something more than victory. Behind him, the world of gods and men is changing. Odin's ravens circle above, whispering of fate, while distant kingdoms prepare for conquest and revenge. Arni's past is a shadow he cannot escape, and his destiny, a storm waiting to rise. Before peace, there must be blood. Before truth, there must be loss. This is where his story begins. Frost covered everything. The air was cold enough to bite through skin. Arn Sigvaldsson stepped out of a small wooden hut, a fishing net over his shoulder. Each step crunched in the snow as he walked toward the river. Behind him, thin smoke curled from the roofs of the sleeping village. Men were already awake, chopping wood, feeding the goats, fixing nets. Children laughed somewhere in the distance, their voices rising like sparks in the cold air. At the riverbank, Arn knelt and broke a thin sheet of ice with his gloved hands. He cast his net into the water and watched his reflection blur and fade in the current. He spoke softly to himself. The gods favor those who rise early, or so father used to say. A small smile touched his lips. From behind, his wife called out, "You'll freeze before the sun climbs the hill." Arn turned, still smiling. "Then the gods will know I'm awake." She shook her head, amused, and went back to milking the goats. The sound of the stream, the creak of wood, and the distant call of a raven filled the valley. Inside their home, a small fire burned low. Two wooden idols stood near the door, Thor and Fry, their faces worn smooth by years of touch. Before sitting down, Arn glanced at them and whispered a quiet prayer. Just one winter without blood. Then, far away, a horn echoed through the hills. The sound rolled over the valley like thunder. Arn froze, listening. The horn came again, closer this time. His wife looked at him, worried. "Is it the Jarl again?" Arn nodded slowly. "It always is." Moments later, a rider appeared through the fog, his horse steaming in the cold air. He shouted as he approached, "Arn Sigvaldsson, the Jarl summons you." Arn sighed, dropped his net, and wiped his hands on his tunic. He didn't look surprised, only tired. He glanced once more toward his wife. No words were spoken between them, only silence and understanding. Later, the fire inside the Jarl's great hall flickered against stone walls. Warriors laughed, drinking from carved horns. The smell of smoke and meat filled the air. Arn stood before the Jarl, a man with a heavy beard and eyes like cold steel. "Arn," the Jarl said, "the western farms refuse tribute. They speak of curses and poor harvests. You will go. Remind them who rules these lands." Arn stared into the fire. "I'm no warrior now. I mend nets, not bones." Laughter burst around the hall. A young warrior shouted, "Perhaps the sea has made him soft." The Jarl leaned forward. "Have you grown soft, Arn?" Arn raised his eyes, calm but firm. "No, my Jarl, only older." The hall fell silent. Then the Jarl laughed, deep and cruel. "Then ride west," he said. "Prove there's still iron in your blood." Arn bowed his head. "I will go." The next morning, before the sun rose, Arn saddled his horse. His wife wrapped a heavy cloak around his shoulders, her hands trembling slightly. She looked up at him. "Will you come back this time?" He smiled faintly. "I always do." Without another word, he mounted his horse. Snow drifted from the roofs as he rode out of the village, his figure fading into the white mist of dawn. Snow stretched endlessly ahead. The wind howled through the fjords like a restless spirit. Arn rode slowly, his horse's hooves sinking deep into the white earth. For 2 days, he traveled across frozen valleys and black pine forests, where even the ravens seemed to watch in silence. At night, he built small fires and slept beside them, his cloak stiff with frost. Sometimes he dreamed of his past, the clash of steel, the screams of men. the warmth of blood on snow. When he woke, his hands would shake. He would stare at them until the tremor stopped. By the third morning, the western farms appeared in the distance, a scattered cluster of houses on a slope overlooking the sea. But something was wrong. No smoke rose from the chimneys. No voices, no movement. Only the cold sound of the wind passing through empty fields. Arn dismounted, his breath clouding before him. He called out once, "Hello." No answer. He walked between the silent homes, pushing open a wooden door that creaked under his hand. Inside, everything was frozen in place. Bowls of grain half-filled, chairs knocked over, a candle burned to the end. He stepped further in and saw the marks, strange symbols carved into the walls, blackened as if by fire. A whisper of fear stirred in his chest. He moved from house to house. Every door hung open, every home empty. It felt as though the people had vanished overnight. Then he heard it, a faint sound like breathing. He turned sharply toward a barn at the edge of the field. Inside, beneath a pile of hay, a small figure shivered. A boy no older than 12, his face pale with frost and terror. Arn knelt beside him. "Easy, boy. You're safe now." The boy's lips trembled. They came at night, not men, not warriors. Arn frowned. "Then who?" The boy's eyes darted to the door. "The cursed ones. The Draugr. They took everyone." Arnie's stomach tightened. He had heard the stories of the dead who walk, bound by anger and unfinished oaths, tales told by firelight to frighten children. But the fear in the boy's eyes was real. Arn stood slowly, looking out toward the hills. The snow there was darker, streaked with something that wasn't shadow. Blood. He gripped the hilt of his old axe, still strapped to the horse's saddle. For years, he had sworn never to touch it again. But now, as the wind screamed across the valley, he knew peace was ending. "Stay here," he told the boy. "Don't come out until the sun is high." He walked into the cold, the axe heavy in his hands. Each step crunched against the frozen ground. The sky had turned gray, thick with snow that seemed to fall faster with every breath. From the forest beyond the fields came a sound, low and slow, like something breathing where no life should exist. Arn stopped. His heartbeat was louder than the wind. Then he saw it, a figure standing between the trees. Tall, still, watching him. The wind carried the stench of death, and Arn whispered under his breath, "Gods, not this again." He raised his axe as the shadow began to move. The shadow moved with the slowness of a nightmare, its limbs stiff, its steps uneven. Snow cracked beneath its weight, though it made no sound of pain. Arnie's breath misted in the air, his pulse pounding like a drum. As the figure drew closer, the storm seemed to pause, and through the falling snow, he saw the face, pale, hollow, eyes like black glass, and around its neck, a small iron pendant he recognized, his brother's pendant. For a moment, the world tilted. Arnie's throat tightened. He took one step forward, whispering, "Bjorn," but the creature did not answer. Its head tilted slightly, like a beast unsure whether to kill or remember. Then it let out a sound, not human, not animal, a roar torn from the pit of something that should have stayed buried. Arnie's grief turned to fury. He swung his axe. The steel struck bone and shattered ice. The creature staggered, but didn't fall. Its hands clawed at him, cold, strong, desperate. They fought in the snow, locked between the living and the dead. Every strike echoed through the valley like thunder. Every heartbeat carried years of guilt. When at last Arnie's blade found its mark, the Draugr fell, silent, heavy, lifeless once more. Arn collapsed beside it, gasping. Snow settled over both of them, as if trying to bury the past all over again. He stared at the iron pendant lying in the snow, the mark of his lost brother, whom he'd once abandoned in war. Now he understood. The curse was never about monsters. It was about the ghosts they carried inside. By dawn, the boy emerged from the barn. He found Arn kneeling beside a shallow grave, his hands raw from digging. The storm had passed. Only a pale blue sky stretched above them, silent and cold. The boy spoke softly. "Was it over?" Arn nodded slowly. For now, He handed the boy a small piece of bread from his pack. "You should go east. Find people. Start again." The boy hesitated. "What about you?" Arn looked toward the sea, where the wind whispered through the cliffs. "I'll stay. The land remembers its dead. Someone should watch over them." The boy lowered his eyes and began walking away, his small figure fading into the distance. Arn sat alone for a long time. The axe lay beside him, its edge dull, its story finished. In the stillness, he felt something shift. Not peace exactly, but understanding. The life of a Viking had always been told through battles and blood. But in truth, it was the quiet after the storm that defined him. The farming, the fishing, the waiting. The losses no saga ever sang of. He closed his eyes and listened. The wind in the grass, the creak of old timbers, the heartbeat of a world still trying to forgive itself. When he rose, the sun was breaking over the fjord. Light touched the snow, turning it to gold. He whispered to the air, "Go well, brother." And as the camera would pull back, we'd see the small figure of a Viking standing alone between land and sea. A reminder that beyond raids and battles, they were men, farmers, fathers, dreamers, fighting not just the world, but themselves. The Viking Age was not just an age of war. It was an age of endurance, of humanity, of quiet strength. Their battles ended long ago, but their stories still breathe. If you felt their world come alive, honor it, like, comment, and subscribe for more forgotten tales of the North.